Video is, my one true love. And so I'm very excited to, geek out with fellow video lovers and chat all things video marketing. Two other, I think, key things to know about me that haven't been talked about from Diana is that I'm a pretty big nerd. So hopefully a bunch of you are as well. I'm currently playing a mountain dwarf fighter character named Barb in my Dungeons and Dragons campaign with my family. We play weekly or sometimes twice a week. And if you ever need or want a friend for RuPaul's Drag Race Trivia Night, please invite me. That's another thing that I became obsessed with over the pandemic. I think it was a world that I wanted to live in as opposed to the world that we were currently living in. So I'm sure lots of you felt that way with the comfort of other shows and television too. Anyway, let's get started. So really, I'm here to chat about video marketing. There's lots of different ways to do video marketing, but ultimately it is grounded in digital strategy, sometimes physical, depending what IRL spaces you can integrate your video strategy into. That is really designed to leverage the power of video to attract, engage, and convert your audience into prospects and customers. I really like to think of it as video content marketing, because businesses are increasingly using video in every part of the marketing funnel to reach those audiences in the customer journey. A lot of marketers in the past have kind of tended to default to using video for purely commercial purposes that can sometimes have little or no direct return on investment, or have seen it as a social only play. But I'm here to tell you that the opportunity is much greater than that, and that the word conversion here is key, because that's where the revenue comes in. Video can definitely be used to raise awareness, create engagement, and drive sales, both for B2C and B2B brands. Some analogy I kind of like to think about is that it's like a couple tablespoons of digital marketing, a few tablespoons of social media, but it's really this full cup of traditional content marketing, but in a much more exciting format. Some of these stats I found really interesting. I'm not sure if any of you follow Wistia or use Wistia as a video marketing platform. We do at Shopify and have for the past about 5 years. They recently released their state video report for 2022, and some of the takeaways in here I found really interesting. The first one in particular is that since 2020, we've seen an increase in consumption in video just across the board. And so video is no longer a nice to have, it's something that is a critical part of a successful marketing strategy. And then last year, this one was fascinating to me, but actually makes a lot of sense considering our circumstances with COVID, but consumption of video outpaced the actual content created. So people are just watching more, and it's ideally or definitely because of our remote environments. We're on a virtual call even right now. This is a huge opportunity this year to start tapping into longer form content, just more video content in general, podcast videos, webinars, more learning-based content, because I think a lot of people are adapting to this kind of new way of learning, and we're definitely seeing more video across the board. All of you who are video marketers or video producers definitely dealt with over the last 2 years and are probably still dealing with a very different landscape in terms of how we produce video. In my last 2.5 years at Shopify, I've led teams in both social media and video marketing. And what I've noticed the most is that the forces of change in production and the viewing habits that happened because of COVID are really continuing to impact current video trends for 2022 and the future. And that's really because customer habits have shifted, and so have their expectations. And that's whether you're in B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter. We're all humans, and we've had to adapt, and we're not going back. And we've adapted to these changes, and this landscape is kind of here to stay. And I like to think about this as kind of 5 key ways that video has changed. And I'll walk through some of these 5 examples now with further examples of how we've done these at Shopify. The first one is really around making video that is now kind of good enough instead of insanely high quality. I think there was a period of time where we were all striving for who can make the best, fanciest, most beautiful, video on the internet. But that has increasingly changed as we've gotten more scrappy, almost more authentic with the video that we are producing at scale, especially. And sometimes that type of video can actually work better than high quality video, especially, and I think that this is obvious on social channels like YouTube and TikTok, but it also depends on who your audience is. If it's primarily Gen Z, then yes, you're definitely going to want to aim for that scrappy production quality over high production quality. But depending on what campaign you're creating video for or what audience you're creating video for, you may still need or want to elevate that production. One example here is the Shopify YouTube team did a test recently with some net new organic content, and they purposely went after a look that felt more native to YouTube. So thinking like big graphics and what can sometimes honestly feel like messy design. Like you look at it and you're like, that's maybe kind of ugly, but there's a way to do it and still be on brand. And it actually really helped them garner some better SEO traffic and create some more like tech flexing videos of our product in these new styles that ended up performing a lot better than they had in the past. And then the second one here is really what I had mentioned this even in the last slide, but using IRL production then for the right moments. So an example of how we've done this at Shopify with our Plus audience, which is really enterprise audience and more established businesses. For our Future of Commerce campaign this year, we chose to do this really slick gradient inspired live action production for this like really key revenue driving campaign. And truly this project as a whole across Shopify is a huge investment for us because it's a massive revenue driver. It helps generate leads for us in a huge way and is very well recepted on, YouTube from an SEO standpoint. And so we knew, okay, this is going to have a big cross-functional impact. We're ready to spend money here and know that it will have a significant return on investment. This style of content is meant to be more of like a vlog that breaks down this very dense report into video format. So going for more of like a sleek and slick style, but then still adding a bit of that trendy fun with the gradients and colors really gave us the right vibe for an end product that needed to be both taken seriously and still be really inspiring. And then this is my favorite. I don't know if anyone else calls it this. I think my team first laughed at me when I called it Frankenstein video, but it's really just the best way to put it. This is one of the biggest changes I've seen in video over the past probably 3 even to 4 years, but definitely more so in the last 2, is really just this complete mixing of video styles into one video. Over the start of the pandemic, I produced a 3-part behind the scenes series with a brand called Weekend Nation. They were a newer brand that was launching on Shopify for the first time. And they were doing it all, obviously in a global pandemic with major shutdowns and a lot of unknowns. And we had to come up with some new solutions for how we could actually tell a behind the scenes story with not necessarily always being able to get behind the scenes. And what I learned is that there's a lot you can do with remote interviews or self-produced content from the people that you're working with, and mixing that with existing B-roll, social media content, even stock footage, or then, mixing it further with some slick motion graphics, potentially even live action B-roll or interviews, which we were lucky and did manage to get some of. I remember when we first started production, I was so nervous. I was like, this is going to be a complete mess. Like, I've never produced a video like this. We're using so many different styles. I don't know how this is going to work, but it ended up being one of the projects I'm actually most proud of from like a creative and stylistic point of view, and even storytelling, because we were able to really create this like engaging and interesting atmosphere by mixing so many different types of content. And I think this is just becoming more and more normal nowadays. The next major change we've seen, again, is really in this like self-produced content. I think this one is pretty, self-explanatory and obvious, especially with the rise of platforms like TikTok. Self-produced or user-generated content can be, both done by the brand themselves and have like hosted personalities, or you can be using your customers for this type of content as well. It works. People want to learn from other humans and see those authentic environments that we talked about before. And so this video here is another example of a test that Shopify YouTube ran recently, where they were trying to see whether or not self-produced organic video content would actually outperform agency produced content. And they found that it did, especially for shorts and some of the key topics that they were going after, which I think makes sense. YouTube is a creator first platform. And so this really just follows those trends that we're already seeing occur on YouTube and TikTok as well. And then lastly, I think this one has also been around for a few years, but has been even more important over the last couple of years within just marketing as a whole, any type of content marketing as a whole, whether it's social, for your blog, your website, podcasting, et cetera. Looking at how you can repurpose content into different formats is something you must start doing immediately if you're not doing it already. From my perspective, this is like by far the easiest way to maximize your production budget and your output, and also give you the most insight into your customer behavior. With Shopify Plus, for example, we've taken longer form content that was like thought leadership style videos about a certain topic. We've cut it down and tested it as YouTube shorts. And we're going to continue playing around with some of that experimentation. We've also turned our podcast series in conversation with Shopify Plus into YouTube videos, which I think is something I'm seeing lots of brands do nowadays, or vice versa. You can take a series that you've done for YouTube and turn it into audio format. And for us this past year going into season 2, this helped us like 5 times our listen rate. So just adding another channel in general and letting people find you on that other channel by easily repurposing audio content that you already have And then one cool thing that we're currently doing right now, you'll see at the top right here with some of these graphics, is we are repurposing just a pure audio interview that we had from someone else who had done a written cover story about the founder of Glamnetic, which is another makeup brand on Shopify. And we're creating a new video story that's purely like illustration and motion graphics style for YouTube. And we're going to test this out as kind of a new format for us and see if investing in repurposing it in that way actually works. And so really, I think the two kind of key takeaways here from all of these changes that have happened, the biggest one being that remote video is just much, much easier to quickly produce. And for that reason, like our team will likely never go back to full-time IRL video production. We've seen how much we can accomplish now and how much more budget we can save when we actually mix some of these styles. Or really look at what opportunities make the most sense to be, investing in boots on the ground production, and then where we can still have really high quality and great quality content while using some of these awesome remote tools that have, been adapted over the last couple of years. I will say though that number two is like, with that being said, again, viewers are humans and we still crave that atmosphere of like a tangible, real environment that has depth and complexity, especially when so much of our world has been virtual for so long. And so I do see IRL production making a comeback here. I do think it's key to like reserve that for your bigger moments and bigger campaigns where you can have the most impact and that your money's going to work for you. And speaking of money, so we've covered all the basics, but how do you actually use these changes and adapt in order to leverage video to drive revenue for your business? First of all, I think it's super important to be strategic about why video in the first place. A lot of people that I talk to, their biggest challenge at a company is that everyone wants everything to be a video. And then they're like, I don't know what to prioritize or like why this thing even needs to be a video. And so if you are the person in charge of the video, production team at your company, or you're the producer, it's really important to ask yourself and your colleagues for that matter, does this message or does this story need to be a video? And if it does, then could it also be repurposed into other formats? How can you connect them? Also thinking about how many channels can this video be stretched across to have the highest impact on the business possible? How can you use this opportunity to then learn more about your audience and how they engage with video content across different platforms? So asking yourself a ton of questions up front and challenging your teams to ask themselves those questions as well is going to be really helpful for you in terms of deciding what to prioritize. And once you then determine that the opportunity for video really is there, you'll want to size it up in terms of effectiveness, effort, and resources. I'm going to kind of park that opportunity sizing idea for right now, because there's actually quite a bit to unpack there in this principle, and we'll dive into it more in a second when we get to prioritization. But next, when you're thinking about revenue, you have to think about the money on the table, both what's going out and what might come in. And so then making it a priority to cast some projections about what kind of return on investment you'll get from the project is going to be really important. If you're making something for free and it's like just a one-person show and it's really easy to do within a couple of hours, some of these exercises aren't necessary, obviously. One note I'll make here is that this exercise and all of these kind of suggestions I'm going to make over the next little while are things that my team only really does when we start a project and we want to make it a priority and think it should be a top priority project. And we know that it will cost us some money, usually more than even 1K, so that we can better understand what that money is going to do for us and the business longer term. And so some of you might be wondering, how do you even make return on investment projections? And so here are some of my tips. The first would be to use insights from previous video content to determine the potential impact. If you had a successful video before that you realized was SEO driven, this is something that actually happened to us. And it got X number of views, had this amount of watch time, and the engagement rate was really high. And it was a success overall, had high impact. Now you can use that to your advantage and say, like, if we invest in this type of content again, it will likely be successful. And it's likely to get this same number of views or same level of engagement. And then we need this much money to execute this project. So if you take that suggested number of views, number of subscribers that you might get from the content, or number of impressions that you might receive, and you take the budget number that you have and then divide it against all of those numbers and get the cost per each of those things. So cost per subscribers will be X, cost per views will be X, and so on. If this is pretty low, it's very likely for your project to get greenlit. Sometimes even if it's high, that's okay, as long as we're doing some of these other exercises and asking ourselves the right questions, we can still move forward with the project, even if, like I said, those numbers are going to be a bit higher. And so the other thing here too is that it's also really important to suggest the kind of impact that your video could have across all of those channels. And if you're going to spend X amount of money and team time, and it includes all of these additional views, subscribers, followers in your estimates, that will help you pitch an idea and move it forward. So if you're making something just for YouTube, look at then what are those other extension channels that you could leverage, like your blog, your website, social media, or paid marketing, and capture that total potential ROI in the early stages in order to align with other teams on also how you'll make the most of your time and money together. And then, of course, you'll want to make sure that you're eventually tracking the final ROI on the project somewhere over time. Like, don't do this immediately. The results won't be great. You'll want to make sure that in your projections, you're also casting like, okay, we're going to look at this in 6 months from now and actually see what the return on investment was like. And then we're going to actually look at it a year later, because with video, especially on platforms like YouTube, sometimes they just need some time and space on those channels to actually get some momentum. And then hopefully you get to a place where you're able to see what types of videos have repeatedly been low cost or like a decent amount of effort, but really high impact in terms of audience engagement or view count, whatever it is that your kind of key metrics are that you're tracking. And then it'll be easier for you to be like, okay, we're going to double down on that and invest more here. The other two key things here, lastly, are making sure that you're connecting all your systems together. So for us, this looks like using a system like Visible. I'm sure there's lots of others to collect the proper attribution data about what content your customers and potential customers are interacting with, and investigating ways to connect those systems to your video marketing platform, whether it's Wistia or Vidyard. This is mostly for anything that is living on your own web pages so that you can actually track that customer behavior. I would say especially so that you're in B2B, so that you can really see how your videos are influencing larger deals and pipeline, but I'm sure that this could be helpful for B2C brands as well. And I'll be totally honest with our team at Shopify right now, this is something that we're really just getting ramped up on, but it is a top priority for us because having that additional view of success is going to be so key for understanding how we're actually influencing deals at the business level. You can also work with your marketing automation team if you have one, or technology team, to set up things like Google Data Studio and look at YouTube metrics and insights, hopefully across other channels that you have as well, like your blog or social media or any advertising metrics, especially for key campaigns, and create some dashboards that can really help you paint a picture and tell the story of your total impact across channels. And then lastly, suggest, and I think that anyone who's like a paid advertiser in the room or has experimented a lot with YouTube ads, this will be a given, but you're going to want to continue to experiment with those YouTube ads, and with the goal being here to use those ads to build up a big enough audience pool each time that you can then leverage that audience pool to retarget them with new ads and campaigns as they come up. We've been doing this a little bit recently, and we'll continue to be testing here with some key projects where we've seen retargeting audiences on YouTube actually have a much higher click-through rate, be higher intent audiences that are much more likely to continue their journey down the funnel with us. And so that's where I really believe that video has the power to engage an audience, tell them who you are, get your content in front of them, and then you're able to hopefully convert them faster. And so part of any video campaign or any video strategy is going to need some mapping out of like what types of videos you're actually going to use to drive revenue. And it will look different. Sometimes you'll only do one of these videos at a time. And obviously with social, it's an ongoing thing. So it's a bit of a different beast. But then there will be other campaigns where you might look at doing several of these and build it out across the funnel and actually have them working in tandem alongside one another. It's really hard to expect that every customer you might interact with, whether they're a prospect or a current customer, is going to see this video at this specific funnel stage. So lower your expectations there and really just try to build the videos that you're working with intention to hopefully be designed for that experience at that funnel stage. But yet, like I said, keeping in mind that anytime your customer can find and interact with you across the funnel in different ways through video will be helpful no matter the campaign. And so I won't go through and like list them all out. If some of you want to screenshot this, or I'm sure you'll find it later. But I always find kind of looking at this really helpful anytime we're starting a net new big project. All right. And so warning, we're about to dive into some of the unsexy, maybe not fun part of video production and video marketing, which is prioritization and scaling. And I'll be very curious to hear later if all of you think I'm like kind of nuts. But I got to tell you, I've learned the hard way, especially being in an organization that has scaled so quickly, that process is a necessary evil. You can get away with a lot when you're a one-man show, and that's fine for a period of time. Even if there's two people, really need a ton of process. But I don't know, from my experience, as soon as you add one more person, even if it's an external freelancer, it just gets harder, and process will make your life so much easier. So if you force yourself to adopt some of these habits early on, I really think you'll just do yourself so many favors as you either grow out your production network externally or hire people internally. And so I'll give you a little bit of insight into kind of what that looks like for us at Shopify. And one thing I should have mentioned up at the top is that this video marketing team at Shopify is relatively new. We came together as a new team in November. And so a lot of the work and suggestions that you're going to see here are things that we've recently just done in order to set the team up with the right foundations and be able to scale and be successful longer term. Would love any feedback if you think all of this is intense or helpful, or if there's anything that you think I'm missing, stuff that you're doing that works really well for you. Always down to tweak processes. Also, they're never meant to be set in stone, and something that is a one and done thing that never changes. I think that you'll notice from here, even from the tweet on this slide, that I'm a huge believer in briefs. No matter kind of what size of the project, unless again it's something that can be executed by like one person in 1 hour, and it's something that you can do really easily, it's going to be a win. My team is expected to fill out a project brief template that asks them to do the following things. So they're going to size up the opportunity, which we'll get deeper into in a second. And then they need to answer, a bunch of questions and criteria. Why is this worth going after? And connect that back to our larger content marketing and revenue marketing team priorities or goals. Then they need to establish some success criteria. So what metrics are you going to track? Why those metrics? What projections are you making? And then this is where that kind of ROI projecting exercise comes into play that I spoke about earlier. They're also, asked to acknowledge any tripwires. And for us, this really means like what things might get in your way. What stuff could cause roadblocks? What are some signs where if we put up this video and in 2 weeks from now, it's like really not getting any traction, like what are we going to do to either change or adapt our strategy moving forward? And then they're also asked to fill out like a bit of a loose or rough distribution plan. This doesn't have to be perfect at this stage. It really can be suggestions because there's going to be an opportunity soon to rope in other stakeholders and get some more clarity there. But I always find it really helpful that if you're the video producer and this is like a hero piece of content or a hero campaign that you are leading, coming to the table with some suggestions, first and foremost, that are strategic is really helpful to get the ball rolling. And then lastly, they need to fill out a RACI model, which some of you might be familiar with, some of you might be not. RACI really stands for responsible, accountable, supporting, consulted, and informed. And so this is where you would map out your stakeholders for the project and all of the different layers of ownership so that there's really clear from the beginning who has final say on this video, who is actually part of the feedback process, who's going to actually help me make the thing, and then who else do I need to kind of inform, but they don't need to necessarily approve the project. They just kind of need to be aware that this is happening. Usually that's like higher level executives or senior leaders and so on. And again, I know this probably sounds like a lot, but trust me, creating clear briefs will save you so much time and trust building with other teams later, even if they're external freelancers and agencies. And will also make it a lot easier for you to pitch your ideas and then ask for budget for different projects. And so now we're into the opportunity sizing. As I mentioned before, a lot of these tactics are new for our team, this one in particular. And this is actually something that we are using across the revenue marketing organization at Shopify. And that means that not just our team is being asked to do the opportunity sizing exercise when they're going into a net new project. So far, I found it really helpful to do this exercise. Again, it's really just asking yourself a series of questions before you decide to start a project to make sure that you even know why you're doing it and what kind of impact you hope it to have on the organization. And so there's 4 key categories. The first place to start is really effort versus impact. So this is looking at like people, teams, hours, et cetera, against that kind of potential impact that you've set out in your objectives or your target or mission of the project. Here is really where you want to balance the level of effort against the return on investment. And so always looking for the lowest possible effort opportunity that's going to have the highest impact is kind of the way that I like to think about this. The project's going to take like 20 people across 6 to 10 teams, and then like several weeks, even quarters potentially, to add or influence 100 new customers, then it's probably not worth your time. If it's going to take 1 or 2 people to spearhead a relatively short period of time to produce, maybe a couple of weeks, then like, let's do it, So it's helping you understand, especially from a team scale perspective, whether or not this is worth yours and other team members' time. The second one here is about time horizon. So measuring the finite versus the infinite, or both. And with this, you really want to aim to evaluate the and then what, and incorporate the finite and the infinite if possible or practical. And so if this project is only achieving like some short-term fixes versus like short-term targets, maybe something to stay away from, or thinking about, is there a way that we can like parallel path or broaden the project to achieve both some of those short-term targets that we're trying to hit, because like we really need sales right now, and especially in X region or something like that. But that long-term, we're going to be able to scale this product into other regions, other audiences, and so on, but kind of be able to do it at the same time. That's where you want to greenlight projects that are going to be able to have a continued impact across many different teams and areas of the business. And that really leads us into reach, which is audiences, regions, different formats. We talked a lot about repurposing content earlier. And so that's a big part that's super key here, especially when it comes to video or content marketing. Especially that Shopify is a global company now, we need to be a lot more intentional with our reach without, diluting that quality. And so for us, if a project is only really serving in one region just okay, or then like multiple regions kind of ineffectively because you haven't localized anything, or it's just not a great experience at scale, then it's going to be a no. But if you can determine other iterations of the project to kind of widen the audiences to support, again, both those short-term and long-term projections, then like, heck yeah, go ahead and do it. And then the last one is really about efficiency. So measuring resources, cost, all that ROI projection mapping, and looking at effort as well as redundancies, especially once you get to, the size of an organization that we are now. There's video work happening all across Shopify. And so we want to make sure that we're not diluting effectiveness, or because we're, about to create a video on the same topic that another team is also working on, or that we're not working with the same merchants or customers in different ways. And so we're doing our own due diligence across the company to make sure we have the right context and that we're not reinventing the wheel every single time, or leveraging stuff that already exists. Like, is there video content or audio content, even written content that we can repurpose before we start completely from scratch is going to be key. And so basically this entire exercise is designed to ask yourself, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? And so this one I'll go over pretty quickly. I think this one is pretty obvious when it comes to prioritization and scaling. Need for templates, like we mentioned earlier, and guidelines and standards. And these are, some of the areas that our team has focused our efforts on the last couple of months in really streamlining processes and our ability to kind of get clarity on what we're doing across a number of different projects. And then some tools. I wonder if all of you are using project management systems. If you are, I'd love to know which ones. For us, we are currently using Asana and really just starting to get ramped up on it. It's definitely helping keep us all sane, especially our YouTube channel manager. Been creating all of these awesome workflows the team can leverage, and some really great templates. The team, can just be aligned and we can automate as much as possible, because I'm sure those of you who are working in YouTube or social know that, publishing content isn't necessarily easy. There's a lot of things you need to check off on your to-do list when you're about to put up something new in the world. And then there's, frame.io that we use for feedback and comments, which we've been finding really helpful. And then closed captioning tools like rev.com and Descript. If there's other tools you guys are using, like I said, drop them in the comments. I'd love to know what works for you. All right. And then big part of video marketing is that it includes, video production is obviously the major beast of it, but there's that digital kind of marketing component that we talked about earlier, social media, and then also design, which video really is design just in a different way. And so it's really important that after you go through this briefing stage that we spoke about, that you get to this kind of more exciting phase where then you get to bring in other team members to help you execute that vision. And the way I like to do this is in, a kickoff sync, which I think is an obvious win. And if you do all that kind of dirty hard work first, the misalignment with other teams likely won't happen. And there's going to be a lot more clarity about what you're trying to achieve and how those teams can also help you and what kind of pivotal role they're going to play. And so this is an opportunity for you to then, clearly and collaboratively establish the vision and the style of the video or the campaign. And depending on the project, you might need an actual design treatment or creative deck. I know for our future of commerce example, which I'll show in a second, we needed an entire creative treatment that was going to help our team thrive and actually understand how we can make decisions about the different types of video content that we needed to create. This might not always be necessary, especially if it's one-off content, but even having your own brand deck and being aligned there will be really key to executing your video visions. And then with that being said, it's again also always helpful to come to this kickoff, like I mentioned earlier, with ideas and examples of like the kinds of videos that you want to create, how you want to adapt and change up the formats across different platforms and channels, especially for ads, because after all, you are the creative director of the video at the end of the day. But then it's really important to like have those strong opinions, but we like to say at Shopify, strong opinions loosely held. Come to the meeting with ideas, but be ready for feedback and seek that kind of design inspiration from the design team and also the strategic information from the performance marketing team as well. They're going to be able to tell you like what actually works. And there's been a lot of conversations in my past about like, oh, well, we want to make this video and we think that this is really cool and we're going to do it this way, but like that might not perform at all. And so the really key thing here is to find that harmony between design and performance and video so that you're actually making things that are going to work and that will stick. This is the step that I think a lot of people actually forget. They'll align really great upfront and figure out what they're going to do. And then they go into production and they get to post-production and they have all these things. But then all of a sudden they forgot like, oh, I needed this and we should have got this on set. I forgot to ask myself all these other questions. And so realigning with both of these teams before you go into production is going to be so key. That's where you can establish all the different formats that you're going to use. If you need other stock photography or headshots, and also make sure that you're filming everything in a way that can be repurposed. And so I'll give you a bit of an example here. And I love what Tracy Wallace here in this tweet says around the fact that you have to build that internal trust before you can really get production or any of the gas running is going to be so key. And so for us, this meant, like I said before, having a vision deck. The video team then took charge and built out what the trends videos were going to look like for this. We got a really great idea of, what ads might look like, what YouTube cover photos and thumbnails might look like. But we couldn't have done any of this without the collaboration with design and how we were able to bring this to life on set. All right, now we're going to talk through some trends. I'll go through these quickly because I know we're getting close to time and I want to be able to save some room for questions. Really, this is my opinion, also based off of, some research, but these are really the things that I'm seeing happen in video content right now and will be the biggest things I think to focus on in 2022. The first one is live streaming. Obviously, this is something that's already happening for B2C and B2B brands. Will look a little bit different, but will definitely be something you'll want to experiment with, especially on kind of the live shopping front. I know working in e-commerce that this is becoming more and more huge, especially on platforms like TikTok and building product awareness. Second one is SEO. This is like no longer negotiable. If you're building an SEO strategy for your website, you need to also do it with video and social media. Chaptering on YouTube, closed captions, metadata, titling, all of that has to be deeply considered. And even the fact that like search functionality on platforms like Instagram has increased competition for SEO on social. And just TikTok having more traffic than Google last year. Like, I think we're going to see that evolve. And so definitely something to pay close attention to. This one's probably my favorite, that like creator integrations are just getting super weird. I watched this video the other day of this guy, Noah, who has like a pet puppet cheetah. And they built this rap about like the Applebee's menu. I watched the whole thing and I would then watch it again because it was actually so good. I was like, the song that he made was actually really catchy. And I found myself then singing about Applebee's and anyway, I'm sure this has happened to some of you as well. So please share any other weird creator integration videos that you've seen in the chat or with me on Twitter. I would love to see more. This one I think is obvious, like optimizing video for sound off is also a non-negotiable at this point. Even though we're working from home, we're still seeing a lot of people just natively on social are watching video with sound off. This could also mean things like taking a video format that maybe you've built for YouTube and turning it into an audio playlist of some kind so that people can listen to it in a different way. If you're doing house chores or going for a walk or something like that, the pandemic has just changed the way that people are learning, like we talked about earlier. And so it could be an opportunity for you to, just switch up formats and play with sound just generally in a different way. And then again, this one I think is obvious too. User-generated content is just huge right now. Humans, trust the opinions of other humans, and this is especially in B2C. And I think it's a great way for you to be able to reach and engage your customers and show off your product in a very authentic way. And so I think we'll just see this continue to rise. And then the last one here is what I like to call that Frankenstein video. This is really about trends I'm seeing in kind of production quality and design. So don't be afraid to mix things up. Don't be afraid to like make your videos a little bit more messy than you might want to. The use of motion design is definitely something that's going to continue to increase as we've seen over the pandemic. I'm seeing lots of bright colors, retro vibes, incorporating sleek design with hand-drawn animation. And I'm really loving this like 80s and 90s nostalgia mixing with contemporary styles right now. And so if you're seeing anything also, please let me know. I'm always on the hunt for new cool looks. And then very lastly, this, has kind of been my mantra for the last couple of years in any of my video marketing work. And it's something that I'm going to carry forward with my team. Really, these kind of 5 key points are great ways to think about what you're doing and remind yourself that videos perform well when we know why we're making them. So answer all those questions, challenge yourself to get through them all. Great videos are created in pre-production. So getting that alignment, getting all that work done should make production and post-production a breeze. Impactful videos are found across many different touch points. So do that channel experimentation. And then share and integrate your work early and often. Bring in those other teams, build that trust, but also be open to critique and shared perspectives and values. Strengthen the entire team. It helps drive iteration and improvement. Often people like to say that feedback is a gift. And in my opinion, feedback is not really a gift. It's rather your responsibility to seek and also offer. And final one here is true to my heart. The best video marketing work that you will do will be done at the intersection of your craft and your discipline expertise. I find some of us in video content and creative marketing can struggle with our creative identities at work. And it can be really hard when, all you really want to do with your life is make a real movie or write your fantasy novel or just live in imagination land, but you make content and ads for a living. What I found is that if you try to merge your craft and creative identity with your discipline expertise, your work on both sides of your life will actually be better for it. You'll be a better marketer and you'll be a better creative. So keep learning and apply everything you learn to everything you do. Thank you.